What happens when two of Marvel's most unhinged villains join forces? Well, you get that in the Red Goblin, one of Spider-Man's most toughest villains. So in 2018, Norman Osborn, one of, if not the most iconic Spider-Man villain, acquired the Carnage symbiote, and the Red Goblin was born. But how did this come about? And what sort of chaos did this create? Okay, so backstory, and how did this all begin? It begins with Norman, who has been depowered in the most recent story. Spider-Man injected him with something so he can no longer access his goblin powers. Unfortunately, in doing so, Norman has realized that even if he tries to inject himself with the Green Goblin form, it no longer works, so he is completely, well, back to normal, which he does not like. Not happy with this, Norman tries many different ways to try and break this cure, as per se. He tries to enroll in magic, which doesn't go down too well. He tries to break into the Sanctum Sanctorum and gets kicked out straight away. The Temple with No Name, they reject him because of how evil he is. Basically, he's going around in circles trying to figure out ideas on what to do. He ends up hiring two guys who steal the lockbox holding the Carnage symbiote, thinking this would be the best option. Norman quickly bonds with the new symbiote, becoming Carnage. First one of the jobs he has for the Carnage symbiote is to go through his body and destroy and reject any of the nanites and serum that is inside him, preventing the Goblin formula from taking a hold of his body. Once this had happened, he then immediately injects himself with the Goblin formula, revamping that Green Goblin inside him, bonding it with the Red Carnage symbiote, and we have Red Goblin. So what do you do once you become a super powerful villain? Of course you're out for revenge, firstly against Spider-Man. He kidnaps John Jonah Jameson, who at this point knows basically all Spider-Man and who he is, and he kills the Goblin King from a previous story, who was one of his nemesis. Unfortunately, in a back and forth between Jameson, who is trying to keep the identity a secret, he let something slip, basically saying that the way Spider-Man caught Gwen Stacy, that the Goblin could never beat him, triggering, of course, that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. As a result, the Goblin goes to the newspaper, tells Peter to go get Spider-Man, and they have a huge battle. It's one of the classic Goblin vs Spider-Man battles, going back and forth until Norman decides it's time to pull his ace out the hole. He straight away tells Peter that he knows that he's Spider-Man, basically, which shocks Peter Parker because he thought Norman had forgotten. And then he pulls out his next ace, which is turning into the Red Goblin. Seeing Norman with the Carnage symbiote as well as the Goblin absolutely terrified Spider-Man, and he fled the scene. He was unfortunately followed by Red Goblin. Red Goblin tells Spider-Man he has two options, which is either give up being Spider-Man, or he will go around and individually murder every one of his friends and families. At this point in time, Spider-Man, of course, surrenders, so at this point there is no Spider-Man. Next on the Red Goblin's hit list is his own family, because why not get revenge on your own family? He goes after Norman and tries to kidnap his nephew Normie, his grandson Normie. However, Spider-Man has done some recruiting, and he has his new team together. He has on his team the Human Torch, he has Silk, and he also has Clash on that team. Even with these numbers, he stands no chance against the Red Goblin. He quite quickly defeats them all, and they were going to be defeated quite badly up until Agent Anti-Venom turned up. Due to Anti-Venom's unique abilities, he was actually able to get the upper hand slightly on the Red Goblin. However, with the Red Goblin being evil, once Anti-Venom was trying to help his friends out, he attacked him from behind, almost killing him. Now, it turns out in all this kerfuffle, Normie has had a bit of the Carnage symbiote bonded with him, so he's becoming a smaller version of sort of the Red Goblin, Carnage kid, basically. And Norman keeps him. He's going to make him his new prodigy. The Red Goblin attacks Alchemax. The idea is to destroy the anti-venom symbiote that they still have stored away there, because he saw how much trouble it caused him. There he is confronted by Spider-Man and Venom, who are not very happy that this sort of bondage has happened. However, again, they are defeated very easily. The Red Goblin is way too powerful for both of them. Norman tries to convince Alchemax that they need to sign the company over to Normie, but in this moment happening, his son Harry attacks him on a goblin glider and a few pumpkin bombs and an army behind him. However, as the story goes, he's also no match for the Red Goblin and is defeated quite easy. It's at this point we see an incredible throwback, because Spider-Man dons the Venom symbiote, one of Venom's favourite hosts, and they confront each other. So you've got Red Goblin, which is the Green Goblin in Carnage, and Spider-Man in Venom, and they have a huge battle. Whilst Red Goblin and Venom Spider-Man are having their battle, Anti-Venom re-emerges. It turns out he wasn't killed by the Goblin after all, and he sees that all of Red Goblin's victims have this little shard of the Carnage symbiote as a needle almost going to their brain, and the only way to stop that is through his suit. So he puts bits of it on there. His anti-venom cures anyone affected by the Red Goblin, and this obviously absolutely irates Norman. He goes down there and he kills Flash Thompson when he wasn't looking. So this is the death of Flash, unfortunately one of the really cool characters. This actually sends Spider-Man over the edge, losing one of his now really close friends. He attacks the Goblin, and this is going to be their big, huge final battle. They battle all over the town, each of them getting the upper hand on each other slowly. Unfortunately, though, it is the Red Goblin who just is willing to do that a little bit more, so he ends up getting the upper hand on Venom Spider-Man. He's choking him, he's looking like he's about to kill him. However, Spider-Man, knowing Norman Osborn, plays on his psyche and says, well, you might be defeating me, but it's not going to be the Green Goblin that gets the credit, it's Carnage, because obviously you're wearing the Carnage symbiote. This really affects Norman's ego, and he sheds the symbiote. In seeing the Green Goblin coming after him, Peter sheds the Venom symbiote, and the battle continues. Goblin versus Spider-Man, just like the good old days. Norman now realizes that he's not going to win without the Carnage symbiote and tries to rebond. However, Peter sees this and he incinerates the Carnage symbiote. With the Carnage symbiote taking all this damage, Norman's psyche is affected badly, as he'd been bonded with Carnage for so long. It ends up destroying his brain, and in doing so defeating him, and the battle is over. They take Norman to the Ravencroft asylum. Inside there, whenever he is questioned, he now believes he is actually Cletus Cassidy, the former host of Carnage, who is also dead at this time, and he now believes that Norman himself was Spider-Man. So he's just sat there, Norman Osborn is saying Norman is Spider-Man. And for now, that is the end of the Red Goblin saga. However, in my opinion, it was one of the coolest villains, and a refresh of an old one that kind of really hooked me in for a Spider-Man for a while. I kind of had gone off Spider-Man for a little bit after the Superior Spider-Man, which I thought was a great story arc. But yeah, Red Goblin was definitely one of the coolest villains to come out in a long time. So, what were the powers and abilities? Well, basically both that of the Green Goblin and Carnage. From Green Goblin he took the super strength, reflexes, endurance, the healing, the brains that came with it, plus the mental instability, slight healing factor, although not up to the par of some of the mutants such as Wolverine. From the Carnage symbiote side, he had the strength, conditioning, telepathy, weapons to be able to construct them, durability, stamina, cardio, you name it, whatever a symbiote could do, he could do. He also had parts from the old hosts, so with Carnage being bonded to Cletus Cassidy, he was a little bit more psycho there. Alright, and there we have it, just a quick rundown of the Red Goblin. If you had any more facts, let me know. If you want to hear about any more heroes or villains, put them in the comments. I think, personally, superheroes like this, where there's a crossover, really cool. So yeah, like the video, share, subscribe. See you next time.